So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Good evening. This is Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie. On this Thursday afternoon, I am broadcasting from Texas and sitting in a thunderstorm. So I hope that the thunder obeys and is quiet during this hour. I'm so happy that you're here with us this afternoon. We have a great show lined up. First of all, we are going to talk to Sister Nicole Kunze, who is a fellow chemist. And thought it would be really great to talk to her and find out more about why she loves chemistry and more about what led her to study chemistry and also to commit her life to being a sister. After that, we'll talk briefly about two more very interesting topics that I feel like I could just ramble on forever, but I have so many years of raising kids and dealing with this very deep topic of video games. We have an article that it was in Science Daily and passed around some Christian media, and the title is "Boys Who Play Video Games Regularly Are Less Likely to Suffer from Depression." So talk about clickbait. That is a very interesting topic, and you know, it's not something we talk about a whole lot, or I don't hear a lot of Catholic parents talk about it. It's kind of like if your kids play video games all day, you just kind of don't tell anybody. But I have lived through many versions of Game Boy and Nintendo and PlayStation with my kids, and I have a few thoughts on that. I also texted my 3 oldest kids and then surveyed my 4 youngest kids to see what they thought, and there's no consensus, but my 10-year-old boy completely agrees with the article. His sister's not so much. And in another segment, the last segment, I want to also talk about another article. It's titled, "Is the Western Way of Raising Kids Weird?" And again, this is something that is outside of the box thinking, and that's the point of the whole article, is to think beyond the Western box, and it exposes people to some different ideas about raising kids and kind of makes the point that maybe what we thought we knew about raising kids and how things are supposed to be isn't necessarily so. And the spoiler alert here is you just have to do what makes sense for your own kids because nobody knows them like you do. But it's a fun article, and it is very important, the ideas to talk about in this article. And it's another one of those things that just doesn't seem to get discussed a lot. But it's always good just to have a frank discussion about those things, especially as we're raising our children in the light of faith, or know children or teach children who are growing up in the light of faith and trying to navigate these times. Welcome to the show now. Our guest is Sister Nicole Kunze, and I want to tell you a little bit about her before we start asking her questions. Sister Nicole in 2016 was elected as Prioress of the Annunciation Monastery. She was installed in May of that year, May 20th. And then on March 14th, recently in 2020, Sister Nicole was re-elected Prioress and will serve another term of 6 years. And there's so many things we could ask her about that. But in addition to this commitment, this vocation, she also studied chemistry. Now, y'all know how I feel about chemistry. I love chemistry. I loved it before I was Catholic. I loved it even more after I was Catholic because I was like, those are God's Legos on the periodic table there. And I know something about how to snap them together. Sister after college graduation in 1999, decided to make her final profession to her community, and she was very happy about it. She went on to teach high school chemistry for 5 years and then pursued a doctoral degree in chemistry education at the University of Northern Colorado. she came back to her community, and she served as a chemistry professor at the University of Mary in Bismarck, one of her sisters' sponsored ministries. So she's done some great things there, some great work, and we're so privileged and happy to have you with us today on the show, Sister Nicole. Welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, we're going to ask you some questions now, and I don't know how many people ask you about this, but I am very interested in your love of chemistry. I don't think of myself as a nerd. I just think of myself as more enlightened than people that don't like chemistry. But I wanted to ask you, like, I could talk forever about why chemistry for me, but why chemistry? Because most people just wrinkle their nose at that. What was it about chemistry that caused you to pursue it as a Catholic woman?
I think it started with my high school science teachers. I was blessed to grow up in Valley City, North Dakota, and had a great number of science teachers there at the high school that got me interested in science as a whole. And so when it came time to look for a college, my intent was to be a high school biology teacher. And that's where, when I came to the University of Mary, I was a biology major because we didn't have a chemistry minor or major, and I wasn't really interested in chemistry. I knew chemistry went along with biology, that you needed both of them a bit. But why chemistry? It comes down to one particular person. Dr. Marla Beam was my organic chemistry professor at Mary. And I think much like a religious vocation and finding your calling or ministry on the work side of life, just the way Marla taught chemistry, I don't know, struck a fire in me, a passion, a curiosity, wanting to know more. And maybe a little bit knowing that not everybody goes into chemistry, and I kind of like to do the things that are hard in life every once in a while. So, but no, I have to give all the credit in the world to Dr. Marla Beam. And that was the best thing about coming back to teach at Mary, was I got to teach alongside of her for 9 years.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I think that happens for a lot of people. It's not so much the subject, it's the teacher and the passion the teacher has for the subject. And it sounds like you bring that passion to your teaching as well.
Yes, I think I copied much of what I learned from Marla, but also all the other great teachers I've had in my life. And yes, I haven't stepped foot in a classroom as a chemistry teacher now for 6 years, but in my role within my community as prioress, I'm teaching in different ways.
Yeah. And I think when you have to explain the periodic table to someone who has no idea what quantum numbers mean, it really does. It teaches you a skill, I think, to take complicated things and learn to put it into digestible tidbits that people can understand. Do you find that to be true?
That is a good point, yes. And I spent much of my teaching career at Mary teaching our survey courses, supporting our healthcare majors. And so for many of those students, it was the one and only chemistry class they were taking in college. So yes, helping them understand it, to why they had to learn it to be a nurse, doctor, med tech. Yeah, you're right. You have to break it down, make it understandable, and kind of get to that application, because that's always the question we chemistry teachers get. Why do I need to know this to be a nurse? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, you may not have to give me the electron configuration of sodium at the bedside, but understanding why sodium reacts the way it does and has the charge it does, yeah, you need that background.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I thought it was kind of like when I studied dogmatic theology in the Catholic Church, I thought it's kind of the same way. You have to be able to break things down to their fundamental particles or fundamental dogmas and know how it all fits together. Right. So you started a major at your university, at the University of Mary. What advice do you have for anyone desiring to strengthen science programs at Catholic universities? We get that question a lot, and I would say even at secular universities. But what was that process like for you, and what advice do you have for people?
It's first of all started with having a very strong math science division at that time. We were in divisions. Now we've reorganized into the School of Arts and Sciences. But it started with a supportive administration, and actually it was our president, Monsignor James Shea, who answered the question a few students posed him. As they said, why can't we have a chemistry major? And he said, why not? Why don't you go and talk to Sister Nicole? And I remember the day the two young men who posed the question to him came running in my office to say, Monsignor Shea says we should have a chemistry major and that he'll support starting it. And, because it had taken me aback, going back to my own story, I almost left the University of Mary without a bachelor's degree because of when I found my love for chemistry. I kept thinking, well, I should transfer somewhere where I can major in chemistry. And Marla said, we will prepare you to go on to graduate school in chemistry. You'll have time to learn that chemistry there, but we will give you everything you need here. And so I did stay. And so my bachelor's degree is in biology. But yeah, and I had a little catch-up work to do when I got to grad school. So we both, Marla and I, had a dream of a chemistry major, but we just weren't sure if there was the student interest. Well, certainly these two students were quite interested, and with the support of administration. And I think, too, the key is having a good supportive department. So the biology department, certainly physics. Now we have engineering, and having us all working together on the same page, because a chemistry major should take a biology class or two, and certainly takes plenty of physics courses. And those biology majors are down in our labs taking Gen Chem, organic, biochem. And so that's the nice thing about teaching at a school the size of Mary. We kind of know everybody. We work together. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, just even in my calling and vocation, relationships are key. Whether we're talking about in the science lab or an English classroom or the business world. And so I think that too has been key at Mary, is the relationships.
Yeah, that just sounds like how it should be. It sounds like, because the sciences really don't have dividing lines between all of them. It is, I always thought, that's why I became a chemist, because I loved biology, but it occurred to me that you don't really understand what those blobs of proteins are unless you know what the atoms are doing.
Right. And I even thought of that even when I taught high school chemistry. I taught some chemistry and some biology, and I always enjoyed teaching the chemistry because you're right, it gets down into those blobs or whatever else it is we're talking about. The other key, I think, with building a chemistry department or any sort of strengthening science programs, and again, this speaks back to the size we are at Mary. Our faculty are the ones teaching the labs. We don't have teaching assistants. We may hire a few for just that 100 level, but, the professor who is teaching your lecture is the one who's also teaching your lab in most cases. And those relationships, the letters of recommendation to get into med school or dental school, building up the relationships, learning. Now we have some faculty who are even doing research projects on campus. We didn't have much of that when I was teaching, but some of the newer faculty who have come, we have summer research now on campus. And with the School of Engineering, that started too, just as I was leaving the university. There's just a lot of opportunities for our students to use their curiosity and try and solve some problems and move forward and be prepared for whatever comes next after their bachelor's degree.
Yeah, that's neat. It sounds like a testament to a small, close-knit college community. You mentioned Monsignor Shea, and the producers here were just mentioning that he's a guest. Actually, did you know this? He's a guest on the Drew Mariani show and Morning Air regularly.
Yes,
so,
I did.
Small Catholic world.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, he's been a great leader at our university now. He's into his 11th year as president, and certainly our vibrancy and growth at Mary is attributed to him and his team,
Right.
along with the prayers of our sisters and
Yes,
some
of course.
very wonderful donors.
Yes. So you have being a sister and thinking a lot about faith, of course, and being a chemist and thinking about science. I always like to pose this question to people because I don't think it's something that we sit and force ourselves to answer on a daily basis. But if you had to sort of step up on the mountain here and just look out over the landscape of our moment in history, what would you say, Sister Nicole, is the greatest or most urgent faith and science issue of our time?
I'll admit I don't think about this sort of question much. So I like the way you put it, Stacy. It's my moment now to step up on that mountain.
Look around.
I certainly think about all of the issues surrounding life. When life begins, how we care, in the healthcare fields. Our religious community also sponsors the Catholic hospital here in Bismarck, and so I serve on that board and am learning the hospital world too. But to try and understand life, the interconnection of it all, honoring life at all stages, ages, forms, that's about all I could come up with as I was thinking about it this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, it's that's one of those really deep philosophical things, and I know scientists have written a lot about it, but what is life? I mean, what is, in chemical terms, we can say what the atoms and molecules are doing in a body that's alive and a body that's not alive, but that really doesn't answer the question about what life is.
True. Yeah. And it's just, as we learn more, or, can go even more, atomic, subatomic now, and even breaking down those subatomic particles. Yeah, we're getting tinier and tinier, I guess you could say. And I said, that's one of the hard parts about the role I have now as serving as prioress of my community, keeping up on science discoveries, reading chemistry journals, just is not part of my day-to-day life anymore. So I said, when I'm done, when I've completed my term as prioress, I be prepared to go back into a chemistry classroom. I may need a whole sabbatical just to catch up on what all has happened in 10 years. Because 10 years in our day and time, a lot happens with science.
Yes. I know sometimes when I'm looking at my children and they're running around asking a lot of things of me, demanding my attention, sometimes I just look at them and I'm like, I wonder how many electrons are whizzing around the atoms in your body right now. It sort of keeps me from losing my temper with them. So I think as a chemist, you see the human person as the body and soul composite, but also you're like, that's a whole lot of atoms doing their thing right there in front of me.
That's right. Yes. And I said, I'm grateful that my sisters, who are not chemists by any means, have done what they can to try and understand my work. Certainly the 5 years I was away at graduate school and emailing them weekly, they did their best to ask questions about my research and my dissertation. But I don't believe if any of my sisters actually read my dissertation when I brought it home, but they prayed me through it. I know they did. So I couldn't have done it without their support.
What was your dissertation, sister?
Since it was in chemistry education, and I knew I was coming back to Mary to teach, it has that bent to it. So I was looking at how students understand acid-base reactions, getting down to, do they really understand what's happening at that subatomic level, that the hydrogen ion and the hydroxide ion are coming together to make water, and then getting them to try and draw those submicroscopic or subatomic drawings of a titration curve. What's happening at the beginning of the titration, what's happening when you get towards that equivalence point and end point, and then what happens when you're past that. So qualitative research, a lot of interviews and transcriptions. And
Oh, neat.
as you would think with an 18 to 20-year-old, not too many abstract thinkers yet. Yeah, they don't quite understand how those ions are coming together. They just notice the color change in our acid-base titration.
I want to get the answer right on the quiz.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are getting ready to go to a break, but I'm so grateful that you could take some time to come and just tell us a little bit about yourself, Sister Nicole, and about your work at Mary's, and taking time to be with us. Thank you so much, and thank you for your vocation and your witness to faith and science.
Well, thank you, Stacy. It was a pleasure visiting with you.
Thank you. I hope you can come back.
Certainly.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Welcome back. This is Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie on Trending with Timmerie this evening. And we're going to switch gears a little bit here. We had a great conversation with Sister Nicole Kunze before, a sister and also a chemist. And it was a great segment, and I encourage you to find that show on the Relevant Radio website or the Relevant Radio app and listen to it if you missed that segment. I want to switch gears really radically now and talk about a very serious issue: video games. There's an Oh, yes. We know those songs so well. They're like ingrained in our brains as part of our life history. Super Mario Galaxy. So this is like not, was when I'm writing all serious about faith and science. This is not something I write about, but oh my goodness, I have so much experience and thoughts on video games because I'm like that old woman who lives in the shoe. I have so many kids, you know the rest, and they all love video games, and it's something. But it's gone on. I've been a parent for 31 years, and I've watched the evolution of the video games, and I see the good and the bad. I'm always trying to be fair to both sides. But there was an article, and it's reposted from a study that was done in the early 2000s, and it was appeared in the journal Psychological Medicine. So it was a scientific study that analyzed 11,341 teenagers born in the United Kingdom between 2000 and 2002. So we're talking back to like GameCube, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360. I think PlayStation 3 would be better, more like it. Nintendo GameCube. We're talking back to those days. So we're not quite talking about the Nintendo Switches of today. But these boys were interviewed at 11 years old. Researchers asked them how much time they spent on social media in 2000. So I don't know. Did they have social media back then? Social media, playing video games, or surfing the web daily. 3 years later, the boys were asked answered the same questions about depressive symptoms, the same questions they had been asked in the 2000 to 2002. Low mood, loss of pleasure, poor concentration, They took into account other factors, which, being a chemist, I don't know how you quantify this stuff, but they have ways to do it. They have rating scales and such. These included socioeconomic status, levels of physical activity, reports of bullying, and previous emotional traumas. And I would say that the same snapshot there holds true today. Kids still have to deal with the same things, even though there's more social media, more and better games, and just a lot more interaction online, more websites to browse. But the study found that 11-year-old boys who did not exercise regularly, so you got to take into account all the things the report says. The 11-year-old boys who did not exercise regularly benefited mentally from playing video games on a regular basis. So these were boys that already were not getting a lot of exercise, and all of them didn't get a lot of exercise, but the ones who did play video games instead of, I guess, the ones who didn't do anything, they benefited mentally. They experienced a 24% drop in depressive symptoms compared to boys who only played games once a month. So there's that. That's a study. I'm a big believer in just hashing out the study, what's in it, taking it for face value, what the researchers did, but then thinking about it in our own lives, especially as Catholics. So I have 7 kids, and I texted some of them before the show because I'm not having them on the show because then there will be a brawl because they're going to have very different opinions. But, I thought it was interesting in my own scientific study of my own 7 kids and 6 grandkids. So 2 of my kids also have some input as parents. The girls unanimously don't think video games are good for the boys. The boys, my 2 boys, they definitely think the video games help them with problem-solving skills. Let's see, my 25-year-old son, who is a chemical engineer in the U.S. Navy, so proud of him. He is happily married and lives in Seattle. I asked him, hey, I'm doing a radio show soon. It's about video games being good for boys, less depression because it teaches problem-solving skills. Thoughts? Oh, definitely, Mom. Problem solving. It feeds your creativity, can help give you good reflexes. And if you do things that require teams to work together, it can teach you teamwork and communication. So this is a successful young man in the U.S. Navy saying this. So I think his opinion has some weight. My 10-year-old son, likewise, agrees with his older brother. Definitely, the Nintendo Switch is the best thing that ever came along. So he's very much seeing the problem solving. But I watched both boys. I remember my oldest son. We had it out over the PlayStation 2 when the PlayStation 3 came along, about the time the study was done, and he was about the age of these boys. And I remember he had the PlayStation 2 and he wanted the PlayStation 3, and I said no. I don't think you need the 3 unless you can tell me what the 3 does that the 2 doesn't do, and then we can sit down and assess whether it's worth $600. And I just remember him standing there looking at me with tears in his eyes because he didn't know what to say to that. And he just said, better graphics, I want it. And I feel kind of bad about that now, but we never did get him that. But when he grew up, he got himself, and he's very good at the video games, and I would say that has helped him with his problem-solving skills. And he can even play from Seattle online with his little brother down in Texas. So there's some good benefit there. My girls, on the other hand, not so much. And the study talks about this too. It says the results reveal girls who use social media on a daily basis from the age of 11, and this is back in 2002, are more likely to experience mental health problems 3 years later, whereas boys didn't suffer the same effects of digital media, especially if they were less physically active. So the girls, I think, it's just a difference in girls and boys. The girls are less likely to get all absorbed in the problem-solving games, although they do quite a bit, especially with the Nintendo Switch. But if they get then onto social media, that is a whole nother can of worms, because then it's not problem solving with a game that has a code written. It's problem solving with other creatures of free will who may not quite understand what it means to have healthy relationships. So there's that. It is an issue in our day, though. If you are a parent or if you know kids and you wonder what to think about this, at a very high level, getting back up on that mountain and looking around at our moment in time like Sister Nicole did, I would say, and be thinking about what you would say, because I think this is something we need to think about, that, in general, it doesn't really work to go to either extreme. I mean, that's kind of what Catholicism is all about. We don't swing real hard either way. We're just trying to find the truth in the middle there, guided by the light of faith and the revelation of Jesus Christ. If you have an opinion on this, I would like to hear it. The number is 888-914-9149. 888-914-9149. We can take your call before we go to the break, or even after we come back from the break before the show ends. But I think we do have to keep our heads about us in this situation. I have always tried. So I'm telling you, I've been parenting for 31 years. I definitely probably have made every mistake in the book. But it's always an experiment. It's like doing chemistry. It's an experiment. You try things, you see if they work, you make an adjustment. You try something else, you see if it works, you make an adjustment. And I have to say, with 7 kids, no 2 of them are even remotely alike. They're so different. It was hard to even get them to say similar things about video games. But all that to say, I wouldn't recommend swinging too far to the side that says you are never allowed to use electronics or play video games at all, because they are frankly tools. We're doing a radio station right now because we have the tools of digital communication, and we're able to communicate like that. We have cell phones, and my cell phone is not just something I like to play solitaire on. It's something that I use to work. So it's good to teach kids to be able to use those tools responsibly. It's scary throwing them into the wild world of video games and especially of social media, but instead of avoiding it completely, you just have to kind of roll your sleeves up and get involved in it with them. I have tried every parental control thing there is out there. I've talked about that before. I have tried flat out taking away the devices and locking them in the trunk of the car. I've done just about everything, but I do feel after I average it all together, taking it all together, the highs and the lows, I do feel that the kids are prepared to make good judgments about their own social media and video game use. I've had talks at a high level with them about make good decisions. Anything that's glorifying evil is not okay. It's poison going into your head, and you need to avoid it. Likewise, things that are glorifying what's good, those are things to look for. And there have been some ups and downs. I sometimes like to think when my teenagers rebel, it's really them practicing searching for truth, and I'm there to guide them through it and show them I can love them even when they do rebel, even when they do get mad because they can't play video games when I take them away, or even when they spend 6 hours a day playing them because I forgot to go check on them. It's all part of the big messy love of raising a child. So there's a little more there to that story. If you have an opinion on this, we'd love to hear it. The number is 888-914-9149. So that's my take on video games. And that is the study that, again, was 11,300. That's a pretty good number of teenagers born in the United Kingdom. We are getting ready to go to a break, and would like to take your calls if you have any thoughts on this. When we come back after the break, still talking about parenting, I want to talk about, is the Western way of raising kids weird? Not just video games, but a whole lot of other stuff. Is it weird? I'm Stacy Trasancos. I'll see you after the break.
Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio Studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/forester.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello, this is Stacy Trasancos in for Timmerie today. It's really good to talk to you this afternoon and discuss topics that are trending. It's always funny, that word trending, because there are so many things that are on people's minds in a given day, a lot of people's minds if it's trending. But it's always possible to take just about any issue and follow the logic right on up to Catholic teaching and take that big view about what's going on. And we're always trying to navigate our life in the light of faith. I really like thinking about it that way. I remember reading the catechism that said dogmas are lights. And I thought that made so much sense, because I remember before I was Catholic wanting so badly to do the right thing in my life and realizing that I didn't even know where to begin to try to sort it out, because you really are just sort of wandering around in the dark trying to figure out what the right thing is to do. But then when you learn about your faith, especially when you accept the gift of faith, and then you learn about divine revelation and all the dogmas and doctrines that we derive from that in dogmatic theology, those are really lights. It's like turning the lights on and you can see the pathway before you that is leading you to heaven. And sometimes you may not see more than a few steps in front of you about where you're supposed to go, but you do have some light guiding the way. You can always take every decision in your life, video games, studying chemistry at a university, whatever it is, and you can connect it. If you keep following the logic all the way to its end and its beginning, you can connect it right back to Jesus Christ. So that's the beautiful thing about our faith, and that's why it's important to not just know the teachings of the Catholic Church, but know how to apply them in your life. That was some thunder here in Texas. So there's another article, and I really, really love the basis of this article. It was in the BBC.com and under the Weird West parenting. And the question says of the article, is the Western way of raising kids weird? So the tenet of this article is that some of the preconceived notions that we have as moms and dads raising kids in the U.S. or the West are not necessarily what parents do in other cultures. And some of the things that we might frown upon in our culture are actually normal in other cultures. So there's it's good to think about that. And I have to say, what I was just talking about before, when I became Catholic and realized the fundamental teachings about what it means to be human, that right there gave me the insight and the power, I would say, the ability to look past social norms in our own culture and do a better job of raising my own babies. I realized I didn't have to answer to social norms. I had to answer to God, and I had to be a good mother to my child. Before we get into what all this article talks about, prams and co-sleeping and whatnot, we have a caller that is related to our previous segment on another parenting topic, video games. And I would like to welcome Lorena to the show.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment and see if you had actually seen, I just recently saw a movie or a document called The Social Dilemma. And I don't know if you've gotten to see it or not. It was on Netflix this week. They haven't taken it off yet. But it featured people who actually created and worked for Google, Facebook, I think TikTok. I'm 57 years old, so I don't remember all of these social media platforms that are out there. And anyway, it it was kind of scary because they said that they started out to make these things to do good for people, but then after a while, they started realizing that we started to become the product for vendors like Google and Facebook and whoever else uses them, and that how they monitor every little move that we do and how long we stay on a certain thing, how many seconds we are. They can tell, whether we're happy, sad, or anything.
Yeah. Oh, Lorena, are you there? So, yes, Lorena was talking about The Social Dilemma, a documentary on Netflix, and how using social media, that we, the humans, our data, information about us, is the product for social media. And I have heard several people talking about this. I haven't seen the documentary myself because I don't have Netflix. I have HBO Max at the moment. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that while she's telling us this, the electronic powers that be out there dropped the call. I wonder what's going on there. But it is a good point. And I honestly, it kind of creeps you out when you think about it. But it is probably true. I mean, everything we do, and I'm always aware of it, like I never send an email that I wouldn't want posted on a bulletin board somewhere. I don't say things on social media I wouldn't stand up on a stage and say in front of a crowd of people. And, in a very real way, we are not private. The idea of privacy on the internet is probably not true. Everything we do is being monitored. So I'm okay with that because I'm shopping for clothes. I know it and I realize it and I accept it and I'm okay with it because I like using the social media as a platform. But yeah, it's true. In a way, it's kind of like if you're walking around the streets of New York, a lot of people are seeing you and hearing you then too. And I kind of hope in living a pretty basic life that with all the data that's being collected from all the people out there, nobody's really paying much attention to what I'm doing. But, that is just where we are in this moment. So thank you for that call, Lorena. I appreciate you bringing that issue up because it is something we need to think about. So back to this article on the BBC and our children. It's talking about, it starts out talking about co-sleepers. And I know this so I don't really, my youngest is 10, so we don't do that anymore for sure. But the article's making the point that babies sleep with their parents in a whole lot of other countries. It is normal. In most other societies around the world, babies stick with their parents longer. Research on children sharing not just a room, but a bed with one or more of their parents is very high in Asian countries, over 70% in India and Indonesia, and over 80% in Sri Lanka and Vietnam. Research on bed sharing rates in countries across Africa, while there's not a lot of hard data, where there is data, it suggests that the practice is nearly universal. Bed sharing. And so that was such a controversial thing when I was having children. And I don't think it ever goes away because my youngest grandchild's 1, and it was still an issue. And I told both of my daughters who have children, you do what you need to do. Like that baby was in your tummy for 9 months. The baby's not really going to like being put in a cold baby bed somewhere down the hall away from you. And I remember we tried it. It was a funny story. We tried to put the baby in the bed down the hall, but then I had another baby because, the Catholic Church says be open to life, and God saw fit to give me 4 daughters in 5 years. And so somewhere when I was pregnant with the third one of that group, and we had a toddler and an infant that could, we really had 2 toddlers, so the infant was walking by then. I remember one night we had them both in their bed asleep, and my husband and I were so glad because we were going to get some sleep. Didn't even happen like that. We woke up in the middle of the night because we heard some scratching around on the floor, and we looked up we sat up in the bed, and like little ghosts rising from the ground, these two little heads, one on each side of the bed, just sort of rose up slowly. The little girls were in our room, sleeping on either side of our bed on the floor because they wanted to be close to us. And that's like the only night I remember sleeping at all. So, the rest of the time, it was one thing or another all the time. But we definitely, just if it helps you to know that we did, I definitely just decided at some point, I'm not telling anybody, but those babies are sleeping with me, because if one baby wakes up, all the other kids wake up, and then nobody gets sleep. And that is a recipe for disaster. So it was out of the box thinking, and I didn't always bathe them every day either. But anyway, the rest of the article talks about sleep training methods. It compares with Australia. There are even state-funded residential sleep schools that parents can check into to sleep train their children. So that goes the other way. Training the kid to sleep, some of this cry it out version. You have to find what works for you. So I'm giving you my personal stories because I think that helps to add that to the mix here. My oldest daughter has 5 children. She has twin girls who are 2 years old. And those babies both go in their beds and go to sleep at the same time every night. And you don't have to do anything but read to them, dress them, go through the routine, put them in their bed, and they conk out. And I was like, how did you do this? Like, I never even came close to achieving something like that. And she's just consistency, consistency. That's what they do. And, maybe it has something to do with twins that have been together all day long. They actually like going apart from each other at the end of the day. So let's see. Do we have a caller here? No, okay. Oh no, we don't. I'm sorry. So if you would like to call, I think we're running out of time. Yeah, we are running out of time. You'll have to wait till tomorrow to call, or if you have a prayer to call for the rosary that comes on after this show, you can call and leave your prayer. But back to this article, and let's wrap it up here at the end of it. Not just bed sharing, but talking about baby wearing. So bed sharing and baby wearing is the other part that this article is talking about. And I think this also makes sense. The article is saying it's really weird that we put kids in strollers. And if this saves you several $100s, I agree that it's weird. Like, it was never really very easy to get my kids to stay in a stroller because they were apart from me. I do, however, have this really, really nice, it's 18 years old now, baby Bjorn that is black leather, because I wear all black because I don't know how to match colors. And I have a baby Bjorn that is leather, like it's actual leather. I don't think there's more than one made in the whole world. And all my babies sat in that thing from the day they were born until they were too big for it. That's pretty much the norm, because it was the only way I could keep the little babies safe from the toddlers, because I couldn't put them down on the floor. And so I used to say, wearing babies, baby wearing, it's what all the cool moms do, because my babies would just go in that thing, and it was comfortable for me, so you have to find one that's comfortable, and they would stick to me just like they were still in the womb or something. So that, do what you want. It's really nice because my grandchildren also go in the black baby Bjorn, and it's just like, my husband's like, it's like nothing ever changed. But anyway, those are some ideas. Think out of the box in the sense of aligning everything you do in your life, raising your kids, picking out the best brand of mayonnaise, whatever it is. Align it with what the Catholic Church teaches, because it's all intended, the dogmas, the lights along the path, it's all intended to get us to heaven and help us lead those people that we love to heaven as well. I'm Stacy Trasancos. I will be back tomorrow night as well, filling in for Miss Timmerie. I'm glad that you joined us tonight, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful Thursday evening and Friday day.